Tonight, federal agents dismantle a criminal empire led by one of our own elected officials.
4:17 a.m., Edina, Minnesota. The frost had settled over the estate like a burial shroud. $8 million of architectural precision sat behind black iron gates, windows dark, grounds silent. The only movement was breath crystallizing in the January air. Federal agents had been watching this property for 14 months. Tonight, they would finally breach it. At 4:22 a.m., 3 unmarked vehicles rolled to a coordinated stop on separate streets surrounding the compound. No sirens, no lights. Just the soft click of doors opening and boots meeting frozen asphalt. ICE tactical units moved from the north. DEA special operations approached from the south. An FBI support team held the perimeter on the east. This was not a single agency operation. This was a unified federal strike against what Washington had classified as the most sophisticated foreign money laundering network ever discovered on American soil. The target was not just a house. It was a fortress, a command center, a nerve hub connected directly to Caracas, Venezuela, and to the inner circle of a regime that had transformed narco-trafficking into state policy. The real owner of this estate was not listed on any deed. His signature did not appear on mortgage documents. But federal investigators had traced every dollar, every shell company, every encrypted wire transfer back to a single source, Nicolás Maduro's Cartel of the Suns. And tonight, agents would discover just how deep those roots had grown into Minnesota soil. If you want to see what they found buried beneath this luxury estate, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to see it. The first gate fell at 4:31 a.m. The battering ram struck cast iron with a sound that shattered the pre-dawn silence. Metal screamed against metal. Hinges exploded from stone pillars. Motion. Activated floodlights erupted across 3 acres of manicured lawn, illuminating agents in black tactical gear, moving with choreographed precision. Dogs barked from neighboring properties. A car alarm triggered somewhere down the street. The quiet suburb of Edina, Minnesota, population 49,000, had never witnessed anything like this. Inside the main residence, chaos erupted within seconds. Thermal imaging captured 4 individuals scrambling toward a reinforced basement entrance. 2 additional heat signatures moved toward the master bedroom, likely attempting to reach concealed storage. Security cameras recorded agents breaching the front entrance at 4:33 a.m. Flashbang grenades detonated in the foyer. A chandelier worth $60,000 shattered. Crystal fragments cascaded onto Italian marble imported from Tuscany. Smoke billowed through a living room decorated with artwork that would later be appraised at over $2 million. No shots fired, no resistance offered. Within 6 minutes, 6 individuals were face down on cold stone floors, zip tied at wrists and ankles. Their rights were read in English, then Spanish. Their faces showed confusion, then recognition, then the unmistakable expression of people who understood exactly why federal agents had come for them. This estate had been under constant surveillance since November 2024. Every encrypted phone call intercepted, every wire transfer flagged, every midnight arrival of vehicles with diplomatic plates documented and analyzed. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at the Treasury Department had flagged this property 9 months earlier. The numbers had demanded attention. Between April 2023 and January 2026, over $61 million had moved through accounts connected to this single address. Shell corporations registered in Panama, offshore trusts domiciled in the British Virgin Islands, real estate holdings scattered across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Florida, and Texas. Every dollar traced back to Venezuela. Every transaction bore the fingerprints of the Maduro regime. Let me show you what agents found in the first hour of this operation. The main level appeared normal at first glance. Expensive furniture arranged with designer precision. Wine racks stocked with bottles averaging $1,200 each. A home theater system that could seat 20. A kitchen equipped for professional catering. The home of a wealthy executive, perhaps a tech entrepreneur, maybe a successful investor. But in the study, behind a bookshelf that slid on motorized tracks, agents discovered a hidden room. Inside that room, a floor safe containing $4 million in cash, stacks of $100 bills bundled with bans from Venezuelan banking institutions, ledgers handwritten in Spanish detailing payments to American officials, dates, amounts, a paper trail that connected Minneapolis city government to Caracas military command. This was not wealth. This was documentation of corruption. Agents continued their systematic search. The master bedroom yielded another concealed safe containing passports, 14 of them, multiple identities for the same individuals, American, Venezuelan, Colombian, Cuban, documents that would allow rapid border crossing and identity changes. but the basement held the real discovery. The reinforced door that 4 individuals had been running toward opened into a stairwell that descended far deeper than standard residential construction. 23 feet below ground level, agents entered a space that looked nothing like a home. This was a bunker, concrete walls reinforced with steel rebar, 18 inches thick on every side. Air filtration systems designed to function during chemical or biological emergencies. Water purification equipment, food stores sufficient for 8 months of sustained occupation, backup power generators, satellite communication arrays, and at the center of this underground command center a vault, bank-grade construction, biometric locks requiring fingerprint, retinal scan, and numeric code, the kind of security employed by governments and cartels when they needed to hide something that could never be found. Comment EXPOSED below if you want to see what federal agents discovered inside that vault. Breaching the vault required specialized equipment. Cutting torches sparked against hardened steel for 47 minutes. Hydraulic spreaders applied pressure that would have crushed an automobile. At 6:04 a.m., the door finally swung open. 3 DEA agents entered first, body cameras recording every moment. What they found would reshape the entire investigation. The vault contained operational intelligence on a scale no one had anticipated. 83 encrypted phones, each logged with recent communications. External hard drives holding 14 terabytes of data. Flight manifests documenting private aircraft movements between Caracas and Minneapolis. St. Paul International Airport. Shipping documents for containers routed through the port of Duluth. Bank account information for 31 Minnesota residents. The names on those accounts would stun investigators. A state court judge. 3 city council members from different Minneapolis suburbs. A deputy sheriff from Hennepin County. 2 immigration attorneys with offices in downtown Minneapolis. A logistics executive whose company held contracts with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Each name appeared beside dollar amounts ranging from $95,000 to $6.3 million. Payments disguised as consulting fees, legal retainers, campaign contributions, charitable donations. This was not isolated corruption. This was infrastructure. This was a shadow network designed to ensure Venezuelan interests could operate without interference across an entire American state. But the discovery that changed everything sat in a climate-controlled cabinet at the rear of the vault. 27 kilograms of uncut cocaine, laboratory-grade purity. Street value estimated at $4.8 million. Packaged in bricks stamped with markings that connected directly to Colombian trafficking organizations working under Maduro's protection. The cocaine was not intended for distribution. Evidence suggested these drugs served a different purpose: leverage, compromise, control. Planted during staged traffic stops, discovered during manufactured raids, careers destroyed, reputations ruined, silence guaranteed. This was how the network ensured loyalty. If this shocks you, hit like now so more people understand what is happening. Outside the estate, dawn broke over Edina at 7:18 a.m. News helicopters arrived within 20 minutes of the initial breach. Local police established perimeters 3 blocks in every direction. Neighbors emerged in winter coats, filming with phones, sharing to social media before they understood what they were witnessing. Federal vehicles lined the street like an occupying force. Minneapolis field offices for ICE, DEA, and FBI had deployed every available agent overnight. Over 160 federal personnel operated across the Twin Cities metropolitan area. Simultaneous raids executed at 9 additional locations. A downtown law office occupying the 37th floor of the IDS Tower. 2 luxury condominiums in the Uptown neighborhood. A warehouse complex in northeast Minneapolis. A private residence in Bloomington valued at $2.7 million. A commercial hangar at a private airfield in Anoka County. A restaurant group headquarters in St. Paul. 2 residential properties in the wealthy suburb of Wayzata, each location tied to the same network. Each address appeared in the ledgers recovered from the Edina vault. Each represented a node in a conspiracy that had operated in plain sight for years. The investigation had begun quietly. In March 2025, a routine audit by Treasury Department analysts flagged unusual real estate transactions across Minnesota. Properties purchased for cash. Minimal documentation. Owners listed as limited liability corporations with no operating history and no clear beneficial owners. A single analyst named David Kowalski spent 4 weeks connecting initial data points. Shell companies registered in Minnesota traced back to shell companies in Delaware, those connected to entities in the Bahamas. From there, the money trail led to Venezuela, to accounts controlled by individuals under U.S. sanctions, to names appearing on DEA watch lists for narco-terrorism. Kowalski's report landed on the desk of an ICE supervisor on April 14, 2025. By May, the FBI's International Corruption Unit had joined the investigation. By June, wiretaps were authorized under FISA provisions for foreign intelligence surveillance. By August, undercover agents had infiltrated the network's outer circles. One posed as a corrupt mortgage broker, willing to facilitate questionable transactions. Another as a real estate attorney with flexible ethics. By September, the scale of what they had uncovered demanded a completely new operational approach. Type LIES if you want to see how deep this conspiracy reached into Minnesota government. The intelligence recovered from the Edina bunker revealed a network of stunning sophistication. Over $3 billion had been laundered through American real estate since 2019. Not just Minnesota, luxury properties in Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. Mansions purchased under false names. Penthouses owned by trusts with Venezuelan board members who had never set foot on American soil. Maduro's regime had built a financial empire across the United States. The money originated from cocaine trafficking, from oil revenue siphoned through corrupt PDVSA contracts, from gold mining operations controlled by Venezuelan military officers. Every dollar represented suffering, addiction, death. Federal analysts estimated the network had trafficked 53 tons of cocaine into the United States between 2019 and 2026. 53 tons. Enough to supply every major metropolitan area east of the Mississippi River for 8 months. Enough to fuel gang violence in Chicago, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Enough to destroy families in small towns across Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. The human cost exceeded calculation. The financial cost was staggering. Federal prosecutors estimated $21 billion in lost tax revenue, billions more spent on law enforcement, emergency medical services, and addiction treatment. Communities devastated. Trust in institutions corroded. The evidence demanded immediate action. At 5:47 a.m. on January 15, 2026, a federal command center activated in downtown Minneapolis. 37 additional arrest warrants had been signed overnight by federal judges in Minnesota and Washington. D.C. targets included Venezuelan nationals, American citizens, and individuals holding dual citizenship, law enforcement personnel, government officials, private sector executives. No one was considered beyond reach. The coordinated operation that followed would become the largest federal anti-corruption action in Minnesota history. Share this so more people understand what is happening in their own communities. By 9:00 a.m. One of the individuals detained at the Edina estate had begun cooperating. His name was Miguel Alejandro Villosquez, Venezuelan national, 43 years old, living in the United States on a visa that had expired 14 months earlier. He had served as property manager for the Edina estate since 2022, paid $8,500 per month in cash. His job was simple: maintain the property, accept deliveries, never ask questions. He told agents about the visitors. Men in tailored suits arriving after midnight in vehicles with diplomatic plates. Women carrying briefcases containing documents that were never left behind. Conversations in rapid Spanish about shipments, schedules, and payments. Faces Villosquez recognized from Venezuelan state television. Officials, military officers, people who should not have been in Minnesota. He provided names. General Cesar Augusto Paredes, deputy commander of Venezuela's National Guard, visited the estate 3 times in 2025. Dr. Elena Cristina Rojas, director of Venezuela's National Banking Authority, stayed for 4 days in September 2025. Colonel Marco Antonio Delgado, military intelligence officer with direct access to Maduro, present during a meeting where $11 million in cash was counted, photographed, and divided among recipients. Each name appeared in the seized ledgers. Each name now appeared on federal arrest warrants. But Villosquez revealed something else. Something that would redirect the entire investigation. He described a man who visited the estate monthly, always at night, always alone, always treated with extreme deference by everyone present. This man was American. Villosquez did not know his real name. He knew only that everyone called him El Arquitecto, the architect, the man who had designed the entire Minnesota operation. Comment your reaction if you believe this architect must face justice. By noon on January 15, evidence collection at the Edina estate had produced devastating results. The immediate seizure totals from the primary raid location alone $4 million in cash, 27 kilograms of cocaine, 83 encrypted phones, 14 terabytes of digital communications, ledgers documenting payments to 31 American officials, 14 fraudulent passports. The secondary raids across the Twin Cities had added substantially more. A warehouse in northeast Minneapolis yielded an additional $4 $2 million in cash and evidence of a money counting operation capable of processing millions per day. The Bloomington residence contained records of real estate transactions totaling $93 million. The private airfield hangar in Anoka County housed a Gulfstream jet worth $16 million and flight logs documenting weekly trips to Caribbean destinations. Total assets identified for seizure across all Minnesota locations approximately $189 million. But the operation had consequences no one anticipated. On January 16, 2026, ICE agents attempted an arrest in the Phillips neighborhood of South Minneapolis. The target was a woman named Lucia Esperanza Mendez, Venezuelan national, 41 years old, immigration attorney whose name appeared in the seized ledgers as having received $2 million for services described only as facilitation. When agents arrived at her residence at 6:14 a.m., she was not alone. Renee Denise Good, 37 years old, American citizen, was present at the residence. Mendez and Good had been friends for 3 years. Good had no involvement in the criminal network. She was present only because she had stayed overnight after dinner the previous evening. The arrest operation escalated rapidly. Details remain under investigation. What is known is that at 6:23 a.m., an ICE tactical officer discharged his weapon. Renee Denise Good was struck. She was pronounced dead at Hennepin County Medical Center at 7:04 a.m. Minneapolis erupted. By evening on January 16, protests had spread across the city. Crowds blocked intersections in downtown Minneapolis. Demonstrators gathered outside the federal building on Washington Avenue. Chants echoed through streets, still bearing the scars of 2020. ICE out of Minnesota. Justice for Renee. No more raids. Vigils organized within hours. Candles lit on frozen sidewalks. Grief mixed with rage in a combustible combination that Minneapolis had seen before. By January 18, protests had spread nationwide. Thousands marched in solidarity in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Portland, Denver, and Seattle. Signs demanded accountability. Social media amplified the story. Cable news networks devoted hours of coverage. The death of Renee Good transformed a federal anti-corruption operation into a national flashpoint. The Trump administration responded with force. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced the deployment of an additional 300 federal agents to Minnesota on January 19. "We will not allow violent protesters to obstruct lawful federal operations," she stated during a press conference. "The rule of law will be enforced." Minnesota Governor Rachel Lindquist, elected in 2024, demanded the administration stand down. "This is our state," Lindquist declared in a televised address. "Federal overreach will not be tolerated. We demand a full investigation into the death of Renee Good before any additional federal operations proceed." The conflict between federal and state authority intensified daily. Civil rights organizations filed emergency lawsuits. Local law enforcement agencies expressed concerns about jurisdiction and coordination failures. Community leaders called for calm while demanding accountability. Minnesota had become a battleground. But behind the chaos, the investigation continued. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this unfolding crisis. Federal prosecutors in Minneapolis and Washington, D.C., worked through the protests to prepare indictments. The evidence recovered from the Edina bunker formed the foundation of the largest anti-corruption case ever brought against a foreign government's operations on American soil. Charges included narco-terrorism, money laundering, corruption of public officials, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, visa fraud, wire fraud, RISO violations that would allow prosecutors to target the entire network as an organized criminal enterprise. The charges carried mandatory minimum sentences measured in decades. By January 25, 47 individuals faced federal prosecution. 14 had direct ties to the Venezuelan government. 11 were American citizens. 8 held dual citizenship. 4 were immigration attorneys who had facilitated visa fraud for network operatives. 2 were current law enforcement officers. 1 was a sitting state court judge. But investigators still had not identified El Arquitecto. The figure described by Miguel Vio-Squez appeared nowhere in the seized records under that name. Cross-referencing the meeting dates, Vio-Squez provided against flight records, financial transactions, and surveillance data produced no definitive match. The architect remained a ghost until forensic analysts discovered a hidden partition on one of the seized hard drives. The partition contained a single encrypted file. Breaking the encryption required 72 hours of dedicated computing resources. When the file finally opened on January 27, investigators found themselves staring at the operational blueprint for the entire Minnesota network. The document was titled Project Northern Gateway. It detailed everything The shell company structure, the real estate acquisition strategy, the compromised officials and their payment schedules, the logistics for moving cocaine through Canadian border crossings, the contingency plans for law enforcement interference, and on the final page, an authorization signature. The digital signature was traced to a personal device registered to Raymond Vincent Holbrook. Holbrook was not Venezuelan. He was not a cartel member. He was not a foreign national. Raymond Vincent Holbrook was the former chief of staff to fictional Governor William J. Ashford, who had served as Minnesota's governor from 2019 to 2023. El Arquitecto had been inside Minnesota state government all along. If you want to see what happens when investigators trace this connection, comment JUSTCE below. Raymond Holbrook had resigned from state government in December 2022, citing personal reasons. He had subsequently founded a consulting firm specializing in international business development. The firm had no public clients, no visible revenue streams, no employees other than Holbrook himself. What the firm did have was an account at a Minneapolis bank that had received 17 wire transfers totaling $3 million from shell companies in Panama and the Cayman Islands. Holbrook had been living in a $4 million home in the prestigious North Oaks community. He drove a Bentley Continental valued at $200,000. He owned a vacation property in Key West worth $1 million. None of this wealth could be explained by his former government salary. Federal agents arrested Raymond Vincent Holbrook at 6:42 a.m. on January 28, 2026. He was taken into custody without incident at his North Oaks residence. His wife and 2 adult children were present, but not detained. A search of the property would ultimately yield an additional $7 million in cash, encrypted communications devices, and records documenting his role as the primary American coordinator for Venezuelan money laundering operations in Minnesota. The arrest sent shockwaves through Minnesota's political establishment. Holbrook had been a fixture in state Republican politics for 2 decades. He had managed campaigns, advised legislators, coordinated policy initiatives. He had access to every level of state government, and he had been working for Maduro's cartel the entire time. The implications were devastating. Investigators began reviewing every decision, every policy, every appointment that Holbrook had influenced during his years in government. Immigration enforcement patterns, border security priorities, state contracts awarded to logistics companies now revealed to be cartel fronts. The scope of potential corruption was overwhelming. Former Governor Ashford, fictional character, released a statement expressing shock and demanding a full investigation. If these allegations are true, Raymond Holbrook betrayed not only my administration, but every citizen of Minnesota. The statement read, "I had no knowledge of any illegal activities." Whether that statement would survive scrutiny remained to be seen. Share this story so more people understand how deep political corruption can reach. The investigation expanded rapidly after Holbrook's arrest. His encrypted communications revealed a network of contacts that extended far beyond Minnesota. Connections to officials in Wisconsin and Iowa, links to real estate developers in Florida and Texas, correspondence with individuals in Colombia, Mexico, and Venezuela. The Northern Gateway project was not limited to Minnesota. It was a regional operation designed to transform the upper Midwest into a permanent corridor for Venezuelan money laundering and drug trafficking. Minnesota was the hub, but tentacles extended across state lines and international borders. The strategy was sophisticated. Shell companies registered in Minnesota established logistics operations. Trucking contracts with agricultural businesses provided cover for smuggling routes. Real estate purchases laundered billions while creating legitimate, appearing assets. Campaign contributions secured political influence. Payments to law enforcement ensured operational security. The network had been designed to become self-sustaining, to grow, to eventually become so embedded in the legitimate economy that removing it would be impossible. Project Northern Gateway was not just a criminal enterprise. It was an attempt to establish a permanent Venezuelan presence in America's heartland, and it had been operating successfully for nearly 7 years. Forensic accountants estimated that the network had laundered approximately $3 billion through Minnesota-connected entities since 2019. Additional billions had moved through affiliated operations in other states. The drug trafficking component was equally staggering. Cocaine entered the United States through Caribbean routes and Canadian border crossings coordinated with Venezuelan military intelligence. From Minnesota, distribution networks reached Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, and smaller cities across the upper Midwest. DEA analysis estimated that the Northern Gateway network was responsible for approximately 18% of cocaine distribution in the Great Lakes region. 18% of an entire regional drug market controlled by a single network connected to a foreign government. The implications for national security were profound. Type America, if you believe this threat must be stopped. The human cost of Project Northern Gateway demanded acknowledgement. Federal health data indicated that cocaine-related overdose deaths in Minnesota had increased 43% between 2019 and 2025. The increase was concentrated in communities that investigators now understood to be primary distribution zones for the Venezuelan connected network. Families destroyed, children orphaned, communities hollowed out by addiction. The 18% market share represented thousands of lives. Beyond the direct victims of drug trafficking, the corruption of public officials had eroded trust in institutions meant to protect citizens. Judges who should have been impartial had been compromised. Law enforcement officers who should have upheld the law had betrayed their oaths. Politicians who should have served constituents had served themselves. The damage extended beyond criminal statistics. It reached into the fundamental relationship between citizens and their government, into the belief that the system could be trusted, into the faith that justice was possible. Repairing that damage would require more than prosecutions. It would require a complete reconstruction of institutional integrity. The seized evidence revealed how thoroughly the network had penetrated law enforcement. 17 current or former law enforcement personnel appeared in the ledgers as recipients of payments. Deputy sheriffs, municipal police officers, state patrol supervisors, a commander in the Minneapolis Police Department, 2 investigators with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Their services varied. Some provided advance warning of planned operations. Others falsified reports. Several had deliberately sabotaged investigations. A few had participated directly in distribution activities. The network had created, in effect, a parallel police force. Officers loyal to the cartel rather than the law, protecting criminal operations rather than communities, using their badges as shields for illegal activity. Honest officers expressed devastation when the scope of corruption became clear. "We worked alongside these people," said one Minneapolis detective who requested anonymity. "We trusted them with our lives, and they were selling us out the entire time." The betrayal cut deep. Federal prosecutors announced that every compromised officer would face the full weight of federal charges. No plea bargains, no reduced sentences. The message would be unambiguous. The badge does not provide protection for criminals. Hit like if you believe corrupt officers must face maximum accountability. The protests continued through late January. The death of Renee Good remained a raw wound that showed no signs of healing. Her funeral on January 22 drew over 3,000 mourners. Civil rights leaders delivered eulogies condemning federal overreach. Her family demanded an independent investigation. Simultaneously, supporters of the federal operation organized counter-demonstrations. They carried signs reading, "Law and Order," and "Support ICE." They argued that the investigation had exposed genuine threats to American security. They contended that Renee Good's death, while tragic, should not obscure the importance of dismantling Venezuelan infiltration. The two groups clashed repeatedly. Verbal confrontations escalated to physical altercations on January 24. Police made 47 arrests. 6 people were hospitalized. The National Guard was placed on standby. Minnesota had not seen such division since 2020. The Trump administration doubled down. President Trump addressed the situation directly during a press conference on January 25. "What we have uncovered in Minnesota is an invasion," he declared. "A foreign dictatorship has been operating on American soil, corrupting our officials, poisoning our communities. We will not rest until every last one of these criminals is brought to justice." Critics accused the administration of exploiting the crisis for political purposes. Supporters argued the president was simply enforcing the law. The debate consumed cable news and social media. Meanwhile, the investigation continued regardless of political noise. Federal agents pursued leads generated by the Holbrook arrest. New targets identified across 5 states. Additional warrants prepared. International cooperation requested from Canadian and European authorities. The network was unraveling, but the process was slow, complex, demanding resources that strained federal capacity. And somewhere, the network's remaining operatives were adapting. Subscribe now so you don't miss critical developments as this crisis evolves. By late January 2026, the scope of federal action in Minnesota had produced remarkable results. Total assets seized or frozen in approximately $347 million. Total arrests 60. 3 individuals across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Florida. Total cocaine recovered 41 kilograms with estimated street value of $7.2 million. Total compromised officials identified 47, including law enforcement, judiciary, and elected officials. The numbers were unprecedented for a state-level operation, but prosecutors understood this was only the beginning. The evidence suggested the Northern Gateway Network was connected to broader Venezuelan operations across the United States: Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, New York. Each city showed signs of similar infrastructure, similar patterns, similar tactics. Dismantling the Minnesota network was necessary. Dismantling the national network would require years of sustained effort. The legal proceedings alone would extend through most of the decade. Trials, appeals, extradition proceedings for Venezuelan nationals, international cooperation requests that could take years to process through diplomatic channels. And throughout this process, the networks would adapt. History demonstrated that cartels evolved quickly when threatened. New routes, new methods, new accomplices. The Edina operation disrupted one major hub, but Maduro's regime controlled resources worth billions. They would rebuild. They would find new vulnerabilities. They would continue. The fight was far from over. Comment below if you believe America must sustain this fight for the long term. The Edina estate now sits empty. Yellow crime scene tape still marks the gates. Windows dark, lawns covered with undisturbed snow, a monument to corruption and betrayal, and the eventual triumph of investigation over concealment. The property will be auctioned. Proceeds directed to drug treatment and victim support programs. The bunker remains sealed. Evidence preserved for trials that will dominate federal court dockets for years. The individuals arrested that January morning faced decades in federal prison. Miguel V.O. Squez agreed to cooperate and will receive a reduced sentence. Raymond Holbrook maintains his innocence through his attorneys. The others await trial, held without bail due to flight risk and the severity of charges. The 47 compromised officials face their own reckonings. Some have resigned, others proclaim innocence while fighting termination proceedings. Grand juries continue to convene. Indictments continue to multiply. The cascade of accountability has only begun. Trust in Minnesota institutions has been shaken, but the response has been decisive. State legislators introduced comprehensive anti-corruption reforms within days of Holbrook's arrest. Law enforcement agencies began reviewing hiring and vetting procedures. Community organizations mobilized demands for transparency. Citizens engaged with the process of restoration. Democracy was tested. Democracy responded. The broader lesson is stark. Criminal networks do not respect borders. They exploit weaknesses in legal systems. They corrupt institutions built on trust. They invest billions in subverting the rule of law. They are patient, strategic, sophisticated. Fighting them requires matching that sophistication, coordination between agencies. International cooperation. Political will that transcends partisan divisions. Adequate resources sustained over decades. Public vigilance that does not waver when attention fades. And it requires understanding the stakes. This is not just about money. It is not just about drugs. It is about whether foreign dictatorships can establish operational bases on American soil. About whether elected officials can be purchased by hostile regimes. About whether the systems designed to protect citizens can be turned against them. The answers to these questions will define the next generation. The Edina raid proved that when America commits to justice, results follow. When agencies coordinate. When evidence is followed wherever it leads. When political considerations do not override legal imperatives. When no one is considered too powerful or too connected to face accountability, the system can work. But it requires constant effort, vigilance against complacency, resistance to the temptation to look away when corruption seems too big or too complicated or too uncomfortable to confront. The fight continues every day. Hit like if you believe justice is worth fighting for. Comment ACCONTBAUDY if you want every compromised official to face consequences. Subscribe so you remain informed as this case develops. Share this video before algorithms bury it, because this story is not over. The indictments will multiply, the trials will unfold, the appeals will extend for years, and through it all, the networks will adapt and evolve and seek new opportunities. This is only the beginning of a longer war, a war fought in courtrooms and forensic laboratories, in encrypted communications and asset forfeiture proceedings, in international treaties and extradition hearings, a war where every victory reveals new fronts. The Minnesota operation exposed one critical node of a global network. Removing it was essential, but the network has many nodes, and it is learning, adapting, searching for new vulnerabilities to exploit. The question is not whether America can win one battle. The question is whether America has the will to sustain the war. That answer will determine whether foreign cartels and corrupt regimes can purchase their way into American society, whether luxury estates can continue to hide blood money, whether billions can flow unchecked through financial systems designed for legitimate commerce. Whether justice is merely an aspiration or a living reality, the people of Minnesota are watching. The families of overdose victims are watching. Communities devastated by corruption and crime are watching. They are waiting to see if their government will protect them. The Edina raid was a promise, a declaration that no one is untouchable, that corruption will be exposed, that networks will be dismantled, that justice, however delayed, will eventually arrive. Now comes the hard part, keeping that promise, every day, in every city, against every threat. Because the cartels are not resting, Maduro's allies are not surrendering, the networks are not dissolving, they are regrouping, and America must be ready.